My name is Amelia Carter, and I am 34 years old. I live in Greystone Valley, a town where life often feels like a beautiful painting. The sunsets bleed shades of orange and purple across the sky, and the gentle rustling of trees creates a symphony of nature that can almost drown out worries. I smile as I watch my 5-year-old daughter, Lily, chase butterflies in the backyard. Her laughter bubbles like a clear brook, innocent and bright. Meanwhile, my 2-year-old son, Max, giggles as he sits in the grass, squishing dandelions between his tiny fingers, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect lives. I love these moments, the sweetness of family and warmth of home, but the unease gnaws at my heart like a persistent ache I cannot shake off. The idyllic scene in front of me is often disrupted by a niggling feeling, whispering that something is very wrong. Ever since my boyfriend's mother decided to foster a 13-year-old boy who had a history of trouble, this unease transformed into something darker and more suffocating. Initially, I approached the idea intending to be understanding. How could I not? Every child deserves a second chance, right? Yet, from the moment this boy came into the picture, he was like a dark cloud hanging over my home. I tried to convince myself that maybe I could help him, that maybe with kindness he would warm like the sun breaking through a storm. But every day I witnessed an unsettling transformation in our household, a consuming darkness that seemed to envelop everything. I would often catch brief glimpses of him on his phone or tablet, eyes glazed over, scrolling through videos that made my stomach knot with dread. I called to mind images of him becoming the kind of kid who bullied others, making little girls cry while the air grew thick with tension. My mind raced with worry as I pictured him lurking around Lily and Max, his hushed laughter turning to snickers born from sinister thoughts. The worst part, the part that disoriented me the most, was my mother-in-law's staggering inability to see what was right in front of her. She, a woman I once respected, was now prioritizing this troubled child over her own son and grandchildren, completely disregarding the sanctity and safety of my family. It was an evening much like any other, the sun dipping low and painting the sky in muted shades of orange. The faint scent of grilled burgers wafted through the air, sending little Max into a fit of happy shrieks while Lily danced around him, twirling in her little sundress. I watched from the kitchen window, my hands wet from washing dishes, my heart heavy with anxiety. When I heard raised voices coming from the living room, I barely registered what they were saying until my boyfriend's voice escalated, filled with frustration. "Mom, you don't understand. You need to listen to her." I froze, dish soap dripping from my fingertips. A pang of fear struck me. I inched closer to the doorway, the argument morphing into something almost surreal. My boyfriend's strong voice contrasted sharply with the frail, whiny tone of his mother. "No, you are wrong. He is just a boy who needs nurturing. He is misunderstood." My heart sank at her words, her unwavering belief in a child whose darkness seeped into our lives like an oil stain. I could not help but feel as if everyone had chosen ignorance over insight. As I stood listening, invisible yet so present, bile rose in my throat. Who was she to deny the instincts that screamed at me to protect my children with all the ferocity of a lioness? What did it mean for the very safety of my family that my pleas were brushed aside like dust from an old shelf? "Why can't you see what's happening?" he pleaded, exasperation lacing his voice. I could almost see the tension pulsing through him, the frustration palpable, but his mother's unyielding persistence fortified her beliefs. "He's just a boy, you need to be compassionate. You cannot cage a bird for being wild." Cage a bird, I thought, my insides twisting further. This boy was not just misunderstood, he was a threat, and I had to protect my nest. How could my mother-in-law equate compassion with disregard for the safety of my children? My heart raced as I quickly retreated to the kitchen, the weight of helplessness bearing down on my shoulders like a stone. I drew in a tremulous breath, fighting off tears, my heart pounding with the weight of my worries. Still, panic washed over me like a cold wave, leaving me breathless. My heart and mind collided in a chaotic dance. Should I be questioning my instincts? Was I an overreacting mother? Or was I right to trust the primal, bone-deep urge to shield Lily and Max from an invisible danger? That night, as the world outside my window slipped into shadows and silence, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. How many sleepless nights lay ahead? How many times would I turn over in bed, haunted by thoughts of every what-if imaginable? "Amelia, it's going to be okay," I whispered to myself, attempting to soothe the storm inside me. But I did not believe my own words. All I could see were vivid flashes of those nightmare scenarios, each more monstrous than the last. What if the boy did something to my children? What if he manipulated their innocence, wrapped them in his chaos? The very idea propelled me upright, the sheets tangling around my legs as I fought to calm my racing heart. With each second that ticked by, the enormity of the situation sank deeper into my consciousness. I could no longer stand idly, paralyzed by fear and doubt. I had to act. I glanced toward the stuffed animals strewn across Lily's floor, her sweet dreams now entangled in the web of risks lying just outside her bedroom door. What kind of mother would I be if I stayed silent? I sank to the floor, my knees meeting the cool wood beneath me. I needed clarity, a plan, something tangible to help me navigate this treacherous new reality. Closing my eyes, I recalled the image of my children, their sweet giggles echoing in my mind, a stark contrast to the shadows I imagined creeping just outside their playground. A lioness protecting her cubs, I resolved, determination pooling deep within my core. No one, not even my mother-in-law, would dictate the safety of my family. I could feel the spark igniting within me, the stirring of something formidable and primal. I would take control. I would do everything within my power to protect Lily and Max, even if it meant wading through adversity, even if it meant confronting the very woman who was oblivious to the danger she welcomed into our lives. Days passed with heavy tension clinging to the air, palpable like the impending storm I could just feel on the horizon. Every time I saw the boy sitting quietly in the living room, immersed in his device, my stomach turned. My mother-in-law would often pat his back affectionately as if to signal acceptance rather than judgment, but I saw through the facade. I couldn't help but picture him lurking in the shadows, plotting ways to wreak havoc on the world around him. The feeling was suffocating, like a noose tightening around my throat. Yet, among my fears, a burning question lingered. How far would I go to protect my children? Against the backdrop of my dreams, those precious moments I had pictured of laughter and joy with my family were intertwined with dark, unpredictable futures. I could hardly sleep. My heart was a battleground, my dreams filled with visions of my vibrant kids being engulfed by darkness. One quiet afternoon, while the light streamed through our living room window like warm honey, I resolved to speak with my mother-in-law. Maybe, just maybe, if I poured my heart into my words, if I stripped my fears bare, she would see the truth. Perhaps she would finally understand the depths of despair that soiled my dreams. I found her crouched by the bookshelf, arranging trinkets with care. Can we talk? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper laden with uncertainty. Slowly she turned, her expression impassive. Of course, what is it? I am really worried about this boy, I started, each word tasting like metal on my tongue. I fear Lily and Max may be at risk. I see how he is consumed by violence, and I cannot just stand by. With a resigned sigh, she rolled her eyes and straightened up. You are being overly dramatic, Amelia. He just needs understanding. Understanding isn't going to protect my kids from what he could bring into their lives. I need you to see that, I insisted, desperation creeping into my tone. Oh, for goodness sake, you're acting as though he is some monster. He is a child who deserves love, she snapped, her voice rising like the tumultuous winds outside. That may be so, but love also means protecting your family from any potential harm. I shot back, my patience wearing thin. How can you ignore the alarming behavior? Because it's not there, not as you are portraying it. You just need to have faith, she countered, crossing her arms defensively, unwilling to break down her protective barrier. Frustration burned in my chest as I took in her light, obstinate stance. The distance between us felt like an insurmountable chasm, one filled with stubbornness and anger. I am pleading with you, please listen. I am not trying to attack you. Then why can't you just trust me? I am his guardian after all, she interrupted, her voice sharp as a knife. As the argument reached a fever pitch, I felt something snap in me. All my fears, doubts, and unease boiled over, spilling forth with hot fury. Because you are prioritizing him over your own grandchildren, this isn't just about compassion, this is about our family's safety. Her shocked expression told me that I had finally struck a chord, but before she could respond, I saw her face harden. You don't know what you're talking about, Amelia. And just like that, the conversation ended. I left, my heart racing, bruised but not broken. Something had shifted inside of me, a determined clarity born from love and protection. I had fought through her obstinacy, and now I felt the resolve building within me stronger than ever. I would forge ahead, motherly instincts roaring to life like a lioness preparing to defend her cubs. I needed a plan, a strategy to ensure Lily and Max remained safe in a world that suddenly felt treacherous. Although the odds seemed stacked against me, I was ready to act. The time for waiting was over. I would claim control of our destiny, even if it did not mean being surrounded by light. Because I knew, deep in my heart, that everything I did, I would do for love days turned into sleepless nights. I could feel the shadows creeping in, darkening my thoughts, making it hard to breathe, like an iron anchor pulling me deeper into an abyss where my dreams lay shattered. The sun would rise, casting a golden light through the living room window, but all I saw were the remnants of my fear scattered like pieces of an unfinished puzzle. I would sit on that fraying couch, my children's laughter echoing in the background, but dread coiled around my heart like a serpent, tightening with every playful giggle I could hear from the yard. Those moments should have brought me joy, but instead felt like a cruel reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the threshold of our home. My mother-in-law had transformed from a seemingly benevolent presence into a looming threat, and I felt it was my responsibility to shield my children from what she had invited into our lives. My instincts screamed at me, a primal urge to protect my little ones, to stand up against the tide rolling in, threatening to submerge us all. Each day I observed, listened, and gathered evidence, the threads of conversations interwoven with whispers of fear, resentment, and confusion. I scrutinized her every move, her every word. The texts on her phone became my lifeline to the truth that lay hidden beneath her calm facade. I didn't need her to say anything. I simply let her unwittingly unravel herself in her own treacherous words. It was terrifying to see her wax poetic about the boy, her foster son, whom I knew was not just misunderstood but a product of chaotic beatings, manipulation, and raised fists. The texts detailed her cries for help, her confessions to friends about how overwhelmed she felt dealing with him, as if the very air suffocated her each time he entered the room. I read her words in the middle of the night, my heart sinking with each line. He scares me sometimes. It feels like he could explode at any moment. Bitter sweetness washed over me. As devastating as it was to bear witness to her turmoil, I allowed myself to relish the small victory that her admissions represented. Here was the proof I had been feverishly searching for, the evidence that would give me the strength to confront her. Yet, as the deep chasm of sympathy opened within me for the boy, I felt a familiar whirlpool of conflicting emotions rising to the surface. He was trapped in a cycle of hardship that no child should ever have to navigate, but I had my children to think of my first priority. And I couldn't shake the images of their innocent faces, bright with laughter, drifting into distant memories if she continued to underestimate the danger at play. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her into understanding how perilous her decisions had become. Every ounce of logic I tried to weave into the conversation felt futile. Should I expend my energy sympathizing with her helplessness when my children's safety teetered on the edge of a knife? The night I gathered enough courage to confront her was like walking into the jaws of a dragon, every instinct urging me to run while my heart beat furiously in defiance. I approached her in the living room. My body trembled from the weight of unshed fears, and I could feel every shadow deepening around us as if the room itself held its breath. The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds, the sound like a distant drum rallying me toward fate, yet each tick felt like a countdown to disaster. As I stood there, the darkness wrapped around me, and I took a deep breath and then another, reminding myself of why I was doing this. I had to stand firm for my children. It was now or never. My voice cut through the air like a thin blade. "We need to talk." It came out steadier than I thought. My fingers twitched at my sides, aching to move, yet I forced them to remain still. The moment her eyes locked onto mine, I felt a chill sweep through my core, an unsettling mix of confidence and fear settling in. She looked up, surprised, her face lit with a flickering amusement that twisted my insides. "About what?" she replied, her tone so casual, so harmless that it sparked a wave of frustration within me. "About your foster son," I said, my heart thundering against my ribs. "I have something you need to see." And just like that, I laid the foundation for the confrontation I had been preparing for, the culmination of all those sleepless nights spent in quiet desperation. I reached for my phone and pulled up the cruelest evidence of her blindfolded reality, the messages that exposed her truth. "Wait," she replied, an iciness creeping into her voice as I thrust the phone toward her, desperate for her to absorb the weight of the words displayed on the screen. "What is this?" She leaned in, scrutinizing it, her expression shifting from surprise to disbelief. I could see the way her brows knitted together, the confusion swirling in her eyes, and it both puzzled and frustrated me. Did she really not know the danger encroaching upon us? "This," I began, my voice steadier without any more doubt creeping in, "is what you have been saying about him when you think no one else is watching. Your texts where you admit to being." My throat caught as I swallowed down a rush of emotions. "Frightened of him, you say he scares you." I motioned toward the messages with a trembling finger, the urgency of the moment amplifying the heat rising in my cheeks. "How can you continue to believe that he is just misunderstood when you have those thoughts?" Her disbelief solidified into an angry disbelief as her face flushed with color. "Amelia," she said, her tone now sharp and heated, "you don't understand the circumstances. He has been through so much. You thought what? That you could save him by ignoring the very real impact he has on our lives." My voice grew louder, filled with conflicting emotions as I tried to rein in my need for her to admit to the truth. "I understand that he is a victim too, but this house is not a battlefield where my children's safety is compromised. You cannot allow him around my kids anymore." The realization settled in like a heavy fog, wrapping around the both of us, suffocating and refusing to ebb away. I felt an impending storm of feelings rushing through me, my heart a fragile thing beating with the fierce protectiveness for my little ones. My children deserved a safe space, a sanctuary away from the scarring they had endured all too soon in their young lives. Each word pulsed with maternal instinct, necessitating that I stand up to carve a path through this tangled mess of emotions. I would not falter, I would not back down. She opened her mouth, about to push back. I could see it in her eyes as they flared with indignation. "You don't know what you are talking about. You think I want this. You think it's easy for me to deal with him, to let him into my life. The burden I carry for him is. Then why are you placing your burden on my children?" I interjected, each of my words growing heavier with realization. "You are making this about you when it should be about them. My children come first." Her expression hardened like steel. "You might be overreacting. Kids can be kids. They are resilient. They will make sense of it all." There was a hint of condescension in her voice, so minor yet razor sharp. I shook my head, feeling like a carsick teenager stuck in a never-ending ride, spinning through dizzying emotions and assertions that made my chest hurt. "No, you don't get it. You are putting your hopes of fixing him above my children's well-being. Every moment he spends in this house increases the risk. Children can only be resilient up to a point, and I refuse to let them teeter on a tightrope stretched over an abyss." The silence that ensued hung heavily, each of us braced for what would come next, waiting for the floodgates to burst. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of understanding, that she grasped the severity of my concerns, but before I could hold on to that glimmer, it disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. She resumed her defensive posture, crossing her arms, the storm clouds of frustration brewing above her. "I can't believe you would jump to such conclusions without giving him a fair chance. You know what happened to him, you know the situation." Her voice wavered, but hurt laced every word she uttered, igniting anger within me. "Fair chance?" I cried, my voice rising as I tried not to scream. "He's already had every chance, and now he's a threat. Have you seen how he looks at my children? Just standing in front of them, you can feel the darkness swirling around him. He could erupt at any moment and you are risking their innocence in the name of misplaced sympathy. The atmosphere crackled with unspoken tension, a showdown brewing right beneath the surface as I replayed the very real fears flooding my mind. She stared at me, her eyes narrowing as she weighed the words. I knew I was ready to face whatever explosion would come next, prepared for this battle, yet the thought of hurting her stung with unexpected weight. This was not merely about the boy anymore. I was confronting the dynamic of our relationship, everything we tried to build together now haunting me in shades of gray. You don't know what it's like, Amelia, she finally whispered, her voice lowering, almost breaking. He's just a child. I had to swallow down the anger rising hotly in my throat. It threatened to turn to ashes in the face of her emotional plea. That's the point, I emphasized, determined to pierce through the fog of delusion. He is a child who needs help, a child who needs to be in an environment that suits him better than this one. Environment makes all the difference. I'm not a risk for your children, she spat back, her voice sharpening like shards of glass, cutting through my resolve. You're treating me as if I'm the enemy. No, I exhaled slowly, trying to regain my composure as the weight of this conflict pressed down once more. But you are turning a blind eye to something dangerous. The kids, they're innocent in this. If you can't recognize that, then who are you truly protecting? As the silence deepened, I realized that the storm surrounding us would not relent so easily. We were caught in a standstill where hurt and fear danced just a step away from our resolve. My heart hammered as I prepared myself for the fallout from this confrontation, a fight to keep my children safe. But behind that, deep down, I desperately wanted her to see reason, desperately wanted the relationship we had forged to survive this moment of truth. I am protecting my family just as much as you are, she finally replied, her voice quieter now, but the exhaustion mixed with determination lingered in her green eyes. Each word struck me with the force of a tempest, leaving me speechless, lost in those inward reflections. In that moment, I knew this battle was more than just words. It was a fight for clarity, a desperate measure to not only confront my mother-in-law but to save us all from the uncertainties surrounding the boy. I was ready, resolute in my belief that love demanded this level of confrontation, embedding itself into the ground like the roots of a mighty tree too deeply rooted to leave. With trembling lips and a beating heart, I took a steadying breath, determined to make her see it through my eyes, for my children, yes, but for her too. This darkness could still be illuminated if only she would take a step into the light. Initially, she was taken aback, her shock rippling through the air like a sharp knife cutting through tension. The living room, once a warm and inviting space filled with laughter, now felt like a battlefield. Walls adorned with family photos felt like silent witnesses to our escalating confrontation. The scent of lavender from the candle flickering on the coffee table clashed with the charged atmosphere, and I braced myself for the fallout from my confrontation. How dare you? She snapped, her voice rising like an angry tide. The words hit me like a physical blow, and I stood my ground, fingers clenched at my sides, unwilling to back down. How dare I care for my children? You are putting them in danger. You have seen the proof, and denying reality is not an option anymore. Her eyes burned with frustration, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of vulnerability. Deep down, she must have known that I was right. I could feel the heat from our disagreement suffocating us, wrapping around us like a thick fog. Silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive, making the air thick with unspoken words. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, each tick a countdown to the moment of truth, and doubt flickered in my heart. I forced myself to breathe, holding onto my resolve like a lifeline. He just needs love, Amelia, she exclaimed, desperation coating her tone. The plea hung in the air, creating a strange tension between affection and fear that made my stomach churn. Love should never come at the cost of innocence, I shot back, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The sound of my voice echoed in the quiet room, filling the space with a sense of urgency. I will not have my kids tested by this boy's troubled existence. You need to choose him or your grandchildren. The weight of my statement hung between us, a bridge over a chasm of complex emotions. Her expression shifted, and I watched as the color drained from her face, revealing the stark truth of the moment. I could see the internal battle raging within her. Would she defend a wounded child at the expense of her grandkids' safety, or would she realize that she needed to protect them first? I thought about my children, how innocent and impressionable they were, and felt my resolve strengthen. I would do whatever it took to keep them safe. A silence fell over us, yet the air crackled with the tension of impending choices and consequences. I could almost feel her pulse quicken, the weight of grief creeping into her expression. I remembered my own children's laughter, the visions of their carefree days, and how I would not let anything jeopardize their happiness. No matter the circumstances, I had to be strong. The anticipation was almost unbearable as I stood there, heart racing, waiting for her move. It felt like time had slowed down, each second stretching into eternity while I fought against the whirlwind of fear and hope swirling inside me. She looked away as if she could not bear the weight of my gaze. I could see her fingers twitching, restless, betraying her turmoil. I wanted to scream out that this was not just about her choice, that it was about lives intertwined, futures hanging in the balance. I clenched my fists tighter, feeling the fabric of my shirt digging into my palms, almost grounding me in the moment. I pushed that flicker of doubt aside. I had to be the mother my children deserved. I could almost hear her thoughts, battling the instincts of a mother, conflicted between love for her son and love for her grandchildren. It is not easy for me to hear this, she finally murmured, her voice faltering. You have to understand. I do understand, I interjected, feeling an icy wave of determination wash over me. It's not easy for me either, but those children in there, they depend on us to protect them. They need us to make the right choices, no matter how hard that is. I gestured toward the open doorway that led to the sound of my children's laughter, somehow vulnerable yet fierce in its innocence. Would you really want your son's pain to become their burden? Her brows knitted together, and I saw her consider my words carefully, parsing through the chaos of emotions as if searching for clarity. You think I don't care about your kids? You think I don't want what is best for all of them? No, I don't think that. What I think is that you have to be realistic. I stepped closer, my voice softening as the fight began to drain out of me, replaced by a deep sadness that threatened to swallow me whole. This isn't about whether we love him or not. It's about what is safe, what is right for everyone involved. Your son needs help, but I'm afraid he's not ready to get that help in a way that's safe around my children. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, and I could see the moment she began to contemplate the truth of what I was saying. Her expression shifted, revealing 1,000 conflicting emotions. But he is just a child himself, she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. How can I turn my back on him? He needs someone to be in his corner. There it was again, the flicker of vulnerability that momentarily softened her features, but it was quickly replaced by fierce determination. No one is suggesting turning your back on him. I'm simply asking you to accept that right now, he is not in a fit state to be around them. He needs professional help, he can get healthy, but he cannot do that while jeopardizing my kids in the meantime. The disappointment in her gaze unnerved me, and I fought against that familiar sense of guilt creeping back in, feeling like I was caught in a tug-of-war between compassion and protection. I just thought we could find a way to make it work, she murmured, sounding smaller, almost defeated. I believed that love could bridge these gaps, maybe it could heal him. Love is not a solution when it puts my children at risk, I insisted, though my voice softened, reflecting her desperation. Love is crucial, but the safety of my children must come first. He needs more than just love right now, he needs structure, boundaries, and guidance. It is not fair to put that burden on our kids just because he's hurting. I could see a battle raging in her eyes. She was weighing her love for her son against what I was saying about my children. The silence stretched again, palpable like a thin layer of glass about to shatter. I could tell I was asking something monumental of her, something that pushed her to her limits. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to lose him, but I don't want to lose my grandchildren either. This is all so hard. I don't know what is right anymore. The vulnerability in her voice and the wavering strength in her expression twisted at my heartstrings. I know, I replied gently, a surge of empathy flowing through me. This was a mother's love battling against fears and loss, and I recognized that very struggle. But sometimes the right thing feels like the hardest thing to do. You have to trust that we will get through this together, but we need to make the right choices first. Her head bowed slightly, and I saw her chest rise and fall as she took an unsteady breath. I could hear the quiet resolve building behind her hesitation. That flicker of indecision morphed into something firm as she seemingly gathered all her courage in that moment. You are right, she murmured, acceptance draped over her features like a heavy quilt. I'll do what you ask, he will not come back here. Relief crashed over me, taking my breath away. The weight of her words settled heavy in the air, a palpable shift that transformed the room. I realized then that I had stood and fought for my children against a formidable opponent, someone who once held power over me. It felt like I had just emerged from a dark tunnel into the light, that somewhere in this struggle a ray of hope had forged its way through. However, I couldn't shake the feeling of sadness as I thought about the boy. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I needed to acknowledge the sacrifice she was making, even though I knew it wasn't easy for her. Not just for my kids, but for him too. He needs real help, and I hope one day he finds it. I just wanted to protect him too, she replied, her voice shaky now, laced with fresh tears. I never wanted it to come to this. I know, I reassured her, hoping to ease her burden just a little bit. But now we can focus on getting him the help he needs without jeopardizing our families. In that moment of understanding, as she wiped away the tears threatening to spill, I could finally feel the tight knot in my chest loosening. I had fought for the safety of my children, and it felt like a massive weight had lifted. I wanted to dwell on that victory, but deep down I felt a flicker of sadness for the boy, wondering how it would all play out for him. Would he lose his way without the support he desperately needed? What would become of him now? The battle was won, but the war was far from over. As I turned to leave, the heavy realization of the fight ahead settled upon my shoulders like a dark fog, mixing with the bittersweet relief flooding my heart. There would still be sleepless nights and still more conversations like this one. The road ahead was uncertain, but for my children, for their protection, I was ready to face whatever came next in the days following that confrontation. I felt both victorious and external waves of anxiety crashing over me. My life started to regain a semblance of normalcy as my children played freely and innocently around the house. Each giggle from Lily and Max washed away fragments of fear, but that peace remained precarious and fragile. Despite the resolve, the shadows of what we had faced lingered just below the surface. I began to wonder if my mother-in-law had truly accepted the change, or if she was quietly plotting a different comeback, one that might endanger my children once again. I knew that I could not let my guard down entirely. I started to share my experiences with other mothers in the community, seeking allies who understood the gravity of what I had been through. It was empowering, discussing the complexities of family dynamics, trauma, and the need to protect kids who could not stand up for themselves yet. I reached out to local parenting forums, voicing my story and hearing echoes of support in return. I could feel the sisterhood forming, mothers banding together to protect the innocence of our young ones in this chaotic world. But then a chilling thought struck me. Just as I had begun to feel more secure, what if my mother-in-law felt betrayed? What if she decided to undermine my decision, taking steps to place her foster son back into our lives undercover? I needed to prepare for that possibility. And then it happened. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, I noticed Max unsettled in his crib, not quite himself. I rushed upstairs to comfort him, only to find him feverish with a mild cough. I sat beside him, whispering soothing words as the panic began to creep back in like an unwelcome mist. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, cutting through the calmness of the room. It was a text from my mother-in-law. "Can we talk? I need to explain myself." I felt something urge my heart, the dread looming large, wrapping itself around my heart as I clutched my 2-year-old tighter, feeling a cold rush of adrenaline surge through me. I had to confront this once and for all. My children's safety was at stake. Sitting on the edge of Max's crib, I could feel the unsettling insecurity creeping in, teasing the corners of my mind. The warmth of his small body, comforting and sweet, offered a fragile anchor against the torrent of my thoughts. I traced my fingers gently over his forehead, feeling the heat radiate like an unwelcome sunbeam on an otherwise cool evening. He squirmed slightly, brows furrowing in discomfort, and I remembered days when his laughter was an unbroken melody in our home, a reassuring sound that masked deeper anxieties. "Shhh, little one, it's okay," I whispered, rubbing his back softly. Each sound outside seemed amplified. The rustling leaves outside and the distant chirping of crickets became the backdrop of my swirling thoughts. The text flashed again on the screen, each time slicing through my resolve like a razor-sharp knife. "What do you think she wants?" I murmured to myself, the walls echoing my questions back to me. The thought that she could even think of explaining herself made my skin crawl. What could she possibly say that would justify her past actions? "She must think I am weak," I added, frustration bubbling beneath the surface of my calm exterior. My heart drummed heavily against my chest, battling the instinct to flee and the compulsion to confront. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and I looked up quickly, half expecting my mother-in-law to burst in with all her rehearsed arguments and faux apologies. It was Lily standing there, her big eyes reflecting innocence and confusion. "Mommy, is Max okay?" she asked, her voice small yet filled with concern. I took a deep breath and nodded, forcing a smile as I motioned for her to come closer. "He's just feeling a little under the weather, sweetheart. How about we sing him a song? That always makes him feel better." "Okay," she chirped, her face lighting up with that pure joy I so desperately wanted to protect. As she climbed onto the chair beside the crib, I could feel my heart squeeze a little tighter, caught between the warmth of love for my children and the impending dread of what I thought would come. "Here we go, Max," Lily began, her voice ringing with an innocent melody. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Each note carried a weight, a promise that no matter what twisted games my mother-in-law played, this moment was ours, delicate yet powerful. Max settled a little, his small whimpers becoming an occasional coo as he listened to his sister's gentle tune. The warmth of those familiar words wrapped around me like a blanket, momentarily lifting the veil of dread that had been hanging overhead, but the phone still buzzed on the nightstand, relentless and unyielding. "I have to respond," I said, cutting off Lily mid-song, earning her curious gaze. "Why don't you finish up here while I take care of something important? Can I pick a song too?" She asked, eyes wide with excitement, and in that moment I almost wished I could focus on that innocent joy instead of the darkness looming over us. "Of course, sweet pea," I replied, leaning down to kiss Max's forehead as I stood. Gently, I snuck past the creaking floorboards to grab my phone, anxiety swirling in my stomach like a tornado. The simplicity of her song contrasted sharply with the chaos brewing in my heart. I stared down at the text, hesitating as my thumb hovered over the screen. Each second stretched into an eternity as I contemplated my response. What if she tries to manipulate me? After a few deep breaths, I finally typed out a message. "What do you want? We have nothing to discuss." My hands trembled as I hit send, almost wishing I could block her entirely. But I knew there was something sinister about her silence after the confrontation, and I feared it might be an indication of something behind the scenes. A moment passed, and just as I was about to put the phone down, a reply pinged back. "I just want to talk. It's important for the kids." The entire world around me seemed to spin shakily as I read those words. My children, her children, it felt like her ultimate trump card, and I would not let her manipulate me into submission again. I need to protect them, I thought, feeling determination surge through my veins. I swallowed thickly, almost laughing at the audacity she had displayed, thinking that after everything we could just sit down for a normal civil conversation. My world had come crumbling down before my eyes the last time we came face to face. I felt like a butterfly trapped beneath a heavy glass jar, desperate to escape. With shaky hands, I made my decision. Instead of succumbing to her bait, I texted back, "We can meet at the coffee shop in town tomorrow at 10 a.m. There will be no discussion about the children, it is not negotiable." This, at least, was within my control. If she wanted to talk, she would do so in public. Perhaps I could gather enough courage to put her on the spot, to see her face when she realized I wouldn't back down, that fear wouldn't draw me away this time. I took a deep breath again, letting the smell of Max's light baby lotion and soft cotton sheets settle over me like a soothing balm. As I turned to see Lily still singing softly to Max, I relished those precious moments, laughter and light that broke through the shadows. I took one more breath, resolved to protect that sweetness with every ounce of strength I possessed. The chill of dread remained in the back of my mind, but as I listened to my children, it melted away like frost in the morning sun. "'Kay, little sunshine," I said, snuggling beside Max. "I have to get through tomorrow no matter what." The stillness sat heavy in the air, underscored by the outbursts of laughter and melody escaping my daughter's lips. Wading through this turmoil, I felt a flicker of hope. With the sisterhood of mothers backing me and my children safely in my hold, I would confront the dark shadows with fierce love and unshakable determination. As I tucked the blanket a little tighter around Max and completely enveloped him in my embrace, I wondered if I was ready for what lay ahead. Reality was creeping down a path that was both familiar and terrifying, and I had to fight for my family's future, no matter how dark the battle might become. Through it all, one thought hung heavy in my chest: I would not falter until everything I hold dear was safe. I steeled myself as I drove to my mother-in-law's house, each mile adding weight to my racing heart. The drive felt endless, winding through the familiar paths of Greystone Valley while my mind replayed the last confrontation again and again like a broken record that wouldn't stop. The way she had dismissed my fears about the boy had stung deeper than I anticipated. What if she turned on me again, motivated by resentment? What if she insisted on reintroducing the boy into my children's lives despite my loud and clear objections? Each thought gnawed at me, whispering doubts into the corners of my mind. As I parked my car outside her home, I glanced at the familiar old oak tree standing tall like an ancient soldier guarding secrets that had long since been forgotten. Its thick branches swayed gently in the breeze, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tumult inside me. I could smell the faint but bittersweet aroma of spring flowers blooming nearby, yet it only reminded me of the difficulties hidden beyond those walls. My heart thundered in my chest as I stepped inside, feeling the familiar weight of history and unresolved tensions sifting through the air like dust motes in sunlight. The dining table stretched out before me like a battlefield. She was already waiting, her expression unreadable. The air felt thick with unsaid words, an unspoken truce hanging precariously between us. I fought to keep my stance confident. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice unexpectedly soft, as if laid bare by the weight of our shared history. I nodded, bracing for what was to come. "I didn't come here for pleasantries," I replied, my words slicing through the tension. Inside, I felt a wild mix of hope and trepidation. Could we truly find a resolution? She drew a deep breath, her eyes sparking with a flicker of vulnerability. "I have realized that things can no longer be as they were before. I do love the boy, but I also love my grandchildren. I was wrong to dismiss your feelings, Amelia." Her acknowledgement was a breath of fresh air, yet I could not shake my caution. Each sentence she spoke felt like a drop of hope in an empty glass, filling me slowly but filled nevertheless with cautious optimism. I remembered the times my children had laughed and played without a care in the world, their innocence untainted until he had come along, a shadow of darkness looming over our bright lives. "I am glad you can see that," I replied, trying to match her sincerity with my own. "But that boy's needs never justify risking my children's safety again." My voice steadied, resolved. Each word came out firmly, as if I were laying down the law in my own heart. I could see a battle within her, a mix of acceptance and an undercurrent of defensiveness, each pulling at the seams of our fragile understanding. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly, almost pleading. I pinched my eyes closed momentarily, taking a deep breath to gather my thoughts. I needed to be clear and I needed to be strong. I could not afford to back down now. "I need assurance. I want you to find another way to help him away from my kids. He can be helped without being in our lives." I spoke the words slowly, deliberately, as if each one weighed 1,000 pounds. The request hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Her gaze fell to the table, wiping around the edge absent-mindedly with her fingers, lost in contemplation. Moments passed like hours as she took in my request. "I promise," she finally said, her voice trembling, the resolve in her eyes wavering. "All right, I will make that happen." That was it. We had reached a tentative agreement, a fragile thread that connected us momentarily, keeping the tensions at bay. I could almost sense the catharsis washing over me as I stood there, struck by the weight of what had passed between us. Leaving her house felt cathartic, like shedding a second skin. I felt lighter, a little more secure in my role as a mother. I realized how important it was to stand firm, to make my voice heard. The drive home was almost surreal. I could still hear my children's laughter ringing clear in my ears, like music carrying me over waves of hope. They deserve to remain unburdened by the complexities of adult lives, their joy as pure and sweet as the scent of blooming flowers wafting in through the car windows. I was committed to being their lioness, defending my cubs with unwavering love and strength. Yet despite my relief, a gnawing doubt lingered, tightening itself around my chest. Would she truly follow through? Would she grasp the gravity of our past, the dangers that had threatened our family unit? It was one thing to voice my concerns. It was another story entirely to believe that she would honor my request. As I pulled into my driveway, the garage door creeping upwards, I glanced at the windows of my home. Light streamed through, illuminating the rooms where my children, innocent and unaware, played happily. I took another deep breath, the familiar aroma of the flowers mixing with the scent of cedar from the wooden posts of our porch filling my lungs. They were safe here, my little world cloaked in a bubble of love and laughter, so far removed from the trials of the outside realm. The kitchen was warm, the aroma of last night's dinner still hanging in the air. I set a plate of leftovers on the table and washed my hands, taking a moment to enjoy the soothing splash of the water, the cool tiles underfoot reminding me of the beauty and simplicity, dishes washed, walls painted with shadows of family memories. I leaned against the counter, a momentary pause to collect my thoughts, but the laughter of my children soon broke through, drawing me out of my thoughts and into their world. "Mommy," my youngest exclaimed, his face lighting up as I joined them. The gleeful shrieks of their playful imaginings enveloped me in warmth. "Look at the tower we built," he tugged at my hand, leading me to their masterpiece of blocks precariously stacked. "Wow, it's impressive," I exclaimed, crouching down to their level. Their joy was infectious, an antidote to the worries that had plagued my mind. I smiled, reaching out to ruffle their hair while feigning mild disapproval over the impending doom of their towers. "Careful, don't let it fall," my heart sang, watching them gleefully try to balance another block on top, their little hands shaking with excitement as they built higher and higher. "Mommy, help," my other child laughed, the sound bubbling with pure joy as I joined them. But just as quickly, the thought of uncertainties and unresolved tensions flickered in and out of my mind, casting ephemeral shadows they were blissfully unaware of. "'Kay, let's see how high we can go together," I said, willing myself to mold those anxious thoughts into fleeting wisps, letting the warmth of their laughter wrap around me like a comforting embrace. They were my priority, my world, and I swore to protect their innocence with every ounce of strength I had. Every block we stacked together felt like a shield against the chaos outside. "Mommy, watch this," my youngest exclaimed as he teetered on an unsteady, precarious block. I held my breath, laughter on the brink of spilling from my lips. The tower swayed, held together by little more than sheer luck, and suddenly it came crashing down, blocks scattering across the floor like confetti. They erupted into laughter, their giggles harmonizing beautifully in chaos. As I watched them tumble into fits of giggles, I realized no matter how many forces were against me this moment, this laughter was my victory, my joy. I was their protector, their fortress against any storm that threatened from outside. Suddenly, the tension from earlier flickered back into my mind, and I forced myself to confront it again. I could not allow my fear to overshadow their joy. I would remain steadfast, ensuring that every step she took moving forward would be monitored and measured closely. In the end, it was not just a matter of family, but of my children and their safety. I needed to hold on to this feeling of resolve to remind myself that I would always fight for them. "Mommy, can we build it again?" They nodded enthusiastically, their eyes shining like jewels, each glimmering with anticipation and dreams. "Absolutely," I responded, a smile breaking across my face. We gathered the scattered blocks, tidying our play area while I took a moment to breathe deeply, letting their laughter drown out any lingering anxieties. With each block they placed, I felt my resolve harden within me. "Let's build the tallest tower in the world." And just like that, hopeful visions of unyielding strength, grace, and resilience filled my heart. They were my cubs, and I would be the lioness defending our pride, come what may.